Hello, dear ones. It's Maria with you again. Today is March 17th, 2022, and I'd like to talk to you about grief, how to overcome grief and reach the state of peace again. But first, for you that's new to my channel, let's do a little summary. We are created by God like Himself. We are part of God's consciousness. We are a beautiful thought in the mind of God. When we incarnate on earth, only part of our soul, part of our consciousness incarnate in the body. The other part remains with God. That's our higher self. So when we come to earth, before we come, we plan our incarnation. We plan our life. We come with a blueprint, let's put it this way. We decide how long we're gonna stay here. We decide who gonna get married, who gonna be our parents, where we're gonna live. We make lots of plans. Of course that we come with our free will, so that plan is not really fulfilled along the way. Sometimes that can be adjustments are made depend on which type of decisions that you make. So I want you to understand that even people that are highly spiritual, that understand what happened after somebody dies, and even the ones that are able to communicate with the loved ones through telepathic, through automatic writing, intuition, dreams, all kinds of mediumship, they still suffer the loss because if a loved one die, you're always gonna miss, even though you understand that that person chose that time, was time for that person to go, you're gonna miss that person. You're gonna miss to interact in a physical sense with that person. And that's normal. That's normal. But what happens many times is some people, they go beyond the necessary time of grief to really heal the loss. And there are many reasons for that. What I have been observing, and also throughout all those books that I'm reading and all the workshops that I've been listening to, I could understand that many of the reasons why people extend the grieving period are because miss of knowledge. So let's give some examples. For example, it's really hard for one mother that had a miscarriage, for example. That mother had a miscarriage, sometimes in the very beginning, sometimes later on. Why those miscarriages happen? They just can't forgive themselves. Sometimes they want to blame somebody, but most of the time they blame themselves and say, oh, if I have done this and that, that would be different. And the truth of the matter is no. They didn't really have the control of that outcome. The soul, for some reason, decide to come for that short period to adjust, but they were not ready to stay yet. Maybe in the future, that same soul would come again, and you'll have a full-term pregnancy. And this is happening a lot, especially the last 10 years, the last 15 years, when the star seeds start to come more frequent. And what happened is those souls, they come with more light than the other kids used to do. So sometimes they make some tries. I say, okay, let's reduce your light to that amount and see how the body responds. The mother's body respond. But so that was too much light. And then the mother had the miscarriage. And then again, they do some adjustments and say, okay, now it will work. That's happened to me, for example. First I had a miscarriage, which was in the very beginning. And then later on, I had a daughter, and then I had a son. And through dreams, through some intuition things, I find out that my miscarriage actually was my son, was the same soul. He came to like test the waters. So would really make sense for me to grieve for the rest of my life because of that miscarriage. Of course, I was sad at the moment. I grieved for some time, but and then I decided, okay, if it didn't happen, is because God decided it was that way. So another thing that happened, it's really hard, especially a mother that loses a child. Sometimes through an accident or sometimes through some kind of disease. And then it's really hard. There will be a time that the mother will really suffer. And it's important that the mother go through that to process that emotion, to process that trauma. The problem is when that trauma, she keeps that trauma to the rest of her life. That's the problem. And it's always have a reason. There is no accident. That child, for some reason, that child didn't need to stay until adult life. They decided, that soul decided that he would come just for that period. She wasn't ready to repair any karma, or she didn't have any karma, or for that experience, everybody involved on her life would benefit more with her departure. So it's always have a purpose. And when they are planning things from the other side, they have a different perspective than us here, because they always see the experience, the soul growth that everybody involved will have with certain outcomes, with certain events. So that's why they choose those kind of things that sometimes us as human is so hard for us to understand. Another thing is, imagine it when you lose like a partner, or many people even lose like a partner. They're so in love and they're planning to get married, and then they lost the loved one and they didn't have that time to really fulfill that relationship. That's really hard. But again, it's always by design, and it's always have a reason, and it's always because for some reason they decided that that event will benefit the most everybody involved on the drama. That doesn't mean the person will not suffer. That doesn't mean that she'll really rebel against God and say that should not happen. But it's important that you really process that emotion. That's important that you process that trauma But it's important that if you are still here, it's because you're not supposed to end your life with the departure of the other person. You have more things to do here. But imagine what happened. You lose a loved one that are too close to you. The first thing you can't accept, you don't want to accept. No, God should not have allowed that to happen. But actually, that person was the one that did the sign off over there and say, okay, I agree that I'm ready to go. And sometimes the person was even suffering, was having a sort of disease, but you want that person to stay as long as you could. Even with the disease, you are never ready to let it go. I will give an example about my grandfather-in-law. He was already his 92, but he had a kidney failure, and the doctors just said, we cannot do any transplant, doesn't really work to do dialysis, so he'll go. It's a matter of 2 days or whatever. So they took him to the hospital just to keep his vital until he was ready to go. But for some reason, he stayed 6 days without eating, without unconscious. Even though he couldn't talk to us, we know he was conscious because he was awake. And we would just imagine how that feel to know that you're gonna die, but you are still here, and we knew he was feeling pain. And that was so confusing because at the same time we wanted him to stay, at the same time we knew that he would get the relief if he would go. That's two contradicting feeling. So in that moment, that's when you really put in the hands of God, and everything has a purpose. So he really had that purification time of 6 days. But after he passed, his soul was free. And he was able to come and show himself to his wife on the next day. Many of the times when people pass, they will have some time to adjust to their new state. But he had that period still when he was here. So when he really made the passage, he was completely free. Another thing that happened is, first, you do not accept. I'm not saying you lost a loved one and then you need to accept the next day. That thing will come to you when you are ready. But really blame God doesn't really help, because every time you do that, you feel worse. So remember, when you have a thought that you're feeling bad, it's because your higher self is looking at the same thing, but is having a different opinion. Another thing is, some people, when they lose a loved one, they want to punish themselves. They think they have to show everybody that they are suffering. They think that they have to suffer, because if they stop suffering, it's like their suffering is keeping the connection to that to the loved one. They really think that they need that suffering, because if they stop suffering, they think they'll lose the connection. But actually, most of the people, after they pass, it's so hard for them, after they lose the body, they can feel things with more intensity, and we are all connected. But the body works kind of a shield. So, but when you are out of the body and somebody has a thought of you, you're gonna hear that thought right away. So all the pain, all that suffering that you are having, that person can feel. If she is already lucid, if that person is already in a state that understand, and then there will not be too much on that. But if that person is still confused, is still not accepting, they think they didn't really want to die, or they didn't even know they are dead, that pain that they are feeling, your feelings, is too much for them. And then our friends on the other side will treat that person will be sleeping for sometimes even for years, until the people here calm down, so they don't get even more disturbed with that bad feeling. So when you love, if you lose a loved one, your suffering doesn't help them. Your suffering, they are able to feel your suffering. But what can you do? What can you do to alleviate that suffering? Remember that when you are in grief, you are here connecting to other entities that are also grieving. And they will be giving thoughts about grief all the time. They want you to stay in that state. But you decide when a thought comes, you decide if you want to feed that thought or not. Instead of feeding that bad thought, so he should not have left, I'm so angry with God, and all those things, you can just try to bring in your mind the good moments we have with that person. Honor that person with good feelings. Send love to that person. It's okay to miss the person. It's really okay to miss the person. And sometimes you want that connection, you want even to dream with that person. But when you are too much in grief, you're not able to do it. Because what happens is, when the person, let's say the person is vibrating here, let's say in pride, when she passes, all the ego mind dissolve. So if she doesn't have anything, any trauma to really work on, if she realizes her state of being an spirit consciousness, that person will come back to that state of love and peace. So for that person to come back to you when you are in grief, it's really hard for them to come down that much, for you to see them. They can be by your side, try to send you love, but you are blocking that love. You're not able to feel. So I have a story that a friend of mine told, that when his grandma was sick, before she passed, he asked her his grandma, when you are in the other side, if you are okay, can you please let me know? Find a way to let me know. And then after his grandma passed, after 2 days, his wife dreamed with his grandma, and she tell my grandson that I'm okay. Why she could not come directly to him? Because he was vibrating here in grief, and she was away high here. But his wife was closer to her, so it was easy for her to reach her, his wife. So that's what happened. So when, if you lose a loved one and you want to you want any sort of connection to that loved one, you're gonna need to rise your vibration at least across the 200. That's courage. So you'll be able to see that person. Not to see, you'll be able to feel. I will tell you one thing. We are trained to be deadly scared of ghosts. Even if your mother passed, you really don't want her to appear in front of you, because you're gonna really pass out. They'll never do that. Your mother that loves you and is vibrating here in love will not appear to you if you're not ready, because she knows that if you're not ready, you come here straight to fear. That's 100. She'll never do that. She'll reach you in a different way, in your dreams, or you're gonna just feel her presence, but you'll not hear, you'll not see. She'll gonna use a way that you can perceive her presence without getting scared, because the fear is our worst enemy, and all the light beings knows that. So a light being will never try to interact with you in a way that will cause you to fear, that will throw you straight away in 100 frequency. They'll never do that. They use another way to communicate with you. But another thing why people suffer longer than they need is because they don't know what happened after the person died. But this is no longer a secret for us. The internet, there are many free informations, books, videos for free that you can know. They are coming back, and through mediumship and channelers, they're telling us what are their experience after they die. And depending on how you are living your life, in which vibration you are, what kinds of thoughts you have, you know more or less what to expect after you pass. So doesn't have, of course, doesn't matter if you're a guru, doesn't matter how you are, how much connection you have with the spiritual world. When you love somebody that's here in the body, that you can hug, that you can talk, that when that person passes, you're gonna miss it. You're gonna have a time of grief. Depending on your understanding, that time will be shorter or longer. But unfortunately, some people hold just more than the necessary. And then because they cannot they cannot leave the 75, that's grief, and then they fall in despair and they keep coming down, and then they just exit too. And doesn't matter if it's a baby, if it's a child, any age, you love, you always are gonna grieve. But know that always have a purpose behind it. And the purpose is always soul growth. That's why you are here. Many of the people that are still in the wheel of karma, they are here to open that awareness, to purify their consciousness, until the stage of love and peace, so they can come back to source. So that's how it is. I hope that's help. And there's just so much to talk about this. If you wanted to share your experience, if you have any question to me, please feel free to write down in the comments. If you want to send me an email, you are able to find my email on my channel. I will be happy to talk to you if you don't want to tell your story in public. But love is always the answer. And grief, I understand grief is part of the process. But we don't need to extend more than the necessary. Because when you do that, you get away from our purpose. And the answer is always love. The connection, when you have a loved one that passed, that love remains. That love remains. Love is never dissolved. Love always exists. A relationship based on love overcome death. So it will always exist. Because we are not a body. We are consciousness. That consciousness, when the body goes to rest, it still exists. And still loves you. And it's love you even more. Because it's no longer bounded by the ego mind. Because the ego mind is created when we incarnate. And remember, it's responsible to keep our body alive. After we lose the body, after the body is put to rest, we no longer need that. So we can feel with more intensity. We can comprehend with more understanding. Our compassion is a way bigger. So when a loved one go to the other side, you don't lose that love. Actually, that love got even bigger. And let me just tell you a story that I thought was really interesting. A lady, she met a guy that was kind of psychic, and he started kind of telling her, oh, I feel a presence of your dad here. And did you pass for a period of sickness? And so, yes, I had cancer a year ago. And so your dad wanted to know that he asked to go before your sickness because he would be able to help you from the other side better than if he was here. I got a little emotional when I hear that story. But how he was helping her there was the bond of love. And she said, yes, I felt my dad all the time. I could feel it, he talking to me. I couldn't really hear the words, but I just feel him. And I knew what he was telling me. And that was incredible. Love never dies. Love never dies. You will never lose your loved one. Because love never dies. It's just transformed. It goes to another dimension. But we are multidimensional beings. Even in the body we are that. So that connection is not broken. But it's really hard to feel if you stay too long here in grief, 75. You need to rise yourself because your loved one is here, is up here. That's where you want to go. I hope that's helped. If you didn't subscribe yet, subscribe to my channel. I have many videos there. That's the number 20. And much love and light to you. I love you.